Good afternoon. My name is Dale Rodriguez, and this is Flabonga Monthrothacube. And with me today, I've got Oliver Kiddell. Hey, Oliver, how's it going?
Good, thank you, Dale. Thank you for very kindly inviting me back onto your show. So clearly the first time didn't go too badly.
I mean, you were one of the more entertaining guests, I'm not going to lie. Not dissing
Oh.
any other guests, but some are more dry and some are more vibrant than others, and you were on the more vibrant end of things.
Well, I
Also,
like to think so. And as I said on LinkedIn either this morning or yesterday, whenever I wrote about it, but I kind of foolishly said, just ask whatever you want. So you may take it and run with it, Dale. Whatever you've got could be an exclusive.
okay, what colour is your underwear?
Oh, that's oh God, I should know this. Red, I think.
I don't know the colour of my underwear, and I realise that's a question that a guy can ask another guy and it'd be okay. I would never ask a female guest that question. That would be
Absolutely.
wildly inappropriate. But them's the rules. Thank you for humouring me.
No.
Oh, okay. See, the reason why I enjoy talking to you, well, not only because you're just kind of a cool guy, is you work in a field that I think a lot of people don't understand.
Sure.
And you put it in your title, lover of marketing.
Yeah.
In your own words, could you summarize like what marketing is?
Sure, and I think this is a really valuable question because I think you are right. I think a lot of people do not understand what marketing is. The way I summarized it to someone in my office this week, because for those who are unfamiliar, I've just started in a new role. So I've been with a company called Metis Consultants for the last week and a half. Thank you very much. And the glory of Metis is that it is a company full of young people. There are a lot of graduate engineers there who are looking to sort of work their way up and become chartered engineers and so on. But I am a one-man marketing band, effectively. There is no one else there who is a specialist in marketing. There are people there who contribute to it. But the sort of specialist experience comes from me. And the simplest way I can convey marketing to someone who isn't a specialist is it is about understanding a product or service that your company provides, understanding or identifying and then understanding a target market for that product or service, and then joining the dots. That's the simplest way I can put it forward. I think that quite often, and I think this is down to the way that marketing is portrayed on television in programs like The Apprentice and Mad Men and so on, and people quite often focus on the creative side of marketing, the highly visual side of marketing. Whereas most of marketing is what I would call strategic. It's about planning, and a lot of it is about back end stuff. I'll give you a great example of this. When I worked for Wolters Kluwer, which had a big marketing team, about 7 of us, I can remember going into a meeting with the sales teams there. And because I'm a content man, first and foremost, what I do is highly visual. If you're an event specialist, what you do is highly visual. If you work on television ads or billboards or whatever, all of that is highly visual and anyone can get it. I was sat next to our digital marketing manager, a lady by the name of Deborah, who I think you've met in the past. And she was talking about the strategic stuff that she was doing on the back end in terms of managing budgets for pay-per-click advertising, paid social, research into keywords to get us up the pecking order on the major search engines, what we call search engine optimization. And we came out of that meeting, and the sales director for that division of Wolters Kluwer, a lovely guy by the name of Matt Barnes. I hope he doesn't mind me naming him in this story because I think he actually comes off pretty well.
We'll tag him later. It's fine. Matt Barnes, right?
No, but he went straight up to Deborah at the end of this meeting and said to her, I did not understand the full extent of the work that you do. And I think it's fantastic. And I just want to say, I'm glad that you presented on this because you've opened my eyes to a whole underworld of marketing that's going on without us seeing it. And what I would say is that if you are someone who wants to understand marketing in greater depth, if you look across at the marketing team in your business and wonder what they do, ask them. Just ask them, because I promise you, most marketers are used to feeling either misunderstood or undervalued.
I assume there's a nice way you can ask them. You can't stroll up and be like, "Hey, man, the hell are we paying you for?" You can't say that. No,
there are ways of framing, and that is why I do what I do. But I do think that most marketers will welcome a genuine interest in the kind of things that they are working on, because quite often that work does not get either the visibility or the recognition that it deserves. And I think obviously there are times when someone is clearly busy and you don't disturb them, but I think most marketers will appreciate that interest. I really do. Does that answer your question?
That does answer my question. The thing that I'm thinking, do I make a controversial statement or do I go back on something you just said? Let's go back on something you said. You mentioned you're now working at Metis, right? And you're the only one in the marketing team per se. Now, Metis aren't a startup or a scale-up. They've been around a while.
About 15 years they've been around.
Have they had marketing people in historically, or are you kind of like pioneering a role?
No, I am taking over from the previous marketing and communications manager, and it is a relatively new discipline within the business, and we're looking to lay the foundations and grow that over time. But the most important thing for me, Dale, is an openness to ideas and a foundation on which people can express ideas freely and without fear. This is my belief throughout my career, has always been that marketing initiatives or campaigns or teams fail when people feel unable to express themselves. You have to create an environment, I believe, where marketers can venture ideas forward, even if they might seem off the hook or not in keeping with received wisdom as to how a business has historically done things. You have to be able to speak your mind. And when people can do that, and when ideas are welcomed and can be discussed respectfully, then we're in a good place. Now, that's not me saying that every idea I've ever had is a brilliant one, and that if I don't get my way every time, I'm not going to be happy within a role. That's not what it's about. And quite often that's not the case, and that's fine. But it is about being able to put ideas forward and venture what I believe to be the right way forward based on my experience of working in marketing in different industries, seeing what's worked, seeing what doesn't. And if we don't run with it, that's fine. But mutual respect, I think, is the most important thing in any marketing team, because it is, in my view, an inherently optimistic profession. It is about ideas. It is about identifying targets and identifying aims and finding ways to work towards them in terms of the growth of the business and the visibility of the business, and bringing leads in that our sales team or our account managers can chase. So I think that it has to, you cannot, I believe, create a successful marketing function in a fearful or tense environment. I really don't believe that.
Following up from a point you said there about leads, I'm going to ask you a question that's very simple, which I know you can't answer in a yes or no. Whose job is it to qualify or validate leads, marketing or sales?
It's both. It's both, and that is why there is such thing as an SQL and an MQL. But I do think that.
Sorry, wait. SQL, MQL. Please explain those acronyms.
Yeah, to marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. But I think that the reason there is no one answer to that is that leads can be obtained in different ways. So, for instance, when I was working in your world, and we went to Accountex every year, that is a hotbed of leads, because people are wearing QR codes around their necks, and you badge scan for 2 days and you end up with potentially 500 different leads. Now, that's normally a sales rep from our team having a conversation of some kind with that person, and therefore they will have the background as to why that person's contact details are now in our system.
Yep.
If we've obtained a lead through what we call inbound marketing, say for instance, a decision maker has downloaded a piece of content from our website because they're interested in our thought leadership, they're interested in past examples of our work, then that's been obtained because of a marketing piece of content. And we in the marketing team will know why it is that we designed that, where it exists on what we call the marketing funnel, i.e. top, middle, or bottom of funnel. And the further down you are, the more along the nurturing path we are with the lead. And then therefore can act accordingly and reach out to that person in the way that we feel is the best way to contact them and bring them the kind of information that we think is going to be most valuable to them. So I really do think it is a joint effort. And the way to make it work is to have a mutual understanding of what the other team is doing. So from my side, working with sales, I want to understand what sales are hearing, and I've just knocked my podcast mic. I want to understand what sales are hearing on the ground. I want to hear about the challenges that they are hearing our customers experiencing. And I want to hear about the ways in which our customers express those and our prospects express those challenges as well. What are the turns of phrase that they use? What is it specifically about that problem that irritates them? Is it about time? Is it about money? Is it about downtime and poor service? Whatever it is, those are the things that we need to hone in on the marketing team. But equally, on the sales side, and this is why I say ask marketing about some of the specific initiatives that they're working on, I think it's important to understand what kind of content is currently on offer, either on a website or on a third-party industry publication. And understand the key messages that we are taking to market so that the way they pitch a particular product or service is aligned with what we're saying in marketing. And just to have an understanding of the research that we have ourselves done into the market, which might be in the form of surveys, it might be in the form of focus groups, it might be one-to-one interviews like this. There are a number of different ways of accumulating customer data. And if I have one critique of marketing teams in general, is that in my view, most marketing teams could afford to invest more in research to understand the target markets that they're looking to appeal to. Quite often, segmentation of a market, understanding the sort of variations within the accountant market, for instance, they can all too often rely on conjecture and hearsay and possibly old research that's now out of date. So I'm a firm believer in the power of research, and that's incumbent, I think, on sales and marketing. Okay.
Completely left field question. Have you always been this smooth, diplomatic, and articulate?
Well, I've always loved talking. I know that's hard to believe. But I've always been. I was always an actor when I was at school. I always did amateur acting.
That's where it comes from. That's where it comes from. I see.
So I've always done that. I've always been a singer. So you learn about breath control and about warm up exercise and things like that. So I speak from.
Wait, how does one control their breath? No.
I mean, it works.
Yeah.
But it's about timing. It's about regulation. It's about breathing from your diaphragm as opposed from higher up your body. So all of those things help you center yourself when you speak.
Do you still act now?
No, I haven't acted for a long time, actually.
What's the best role you've ever played? The one you enjoyed the most? What character you're like, yeah, I love this role?
I mean, there will be people I went to school with who will kill me if I don't mention High School Musical. So I did do that at school.
Who did you play in High School Musical?
I played Zac Efron.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
I can't say it was the best performance I ever gave in anything, but that did happen.
You enjoyed playing that role?
I enjoyed playing the role. I didn't necessarily enjoy the attention that I was getting from around the school. I don't remember a school play that ever made life more difficult for me.
No. We got to go into that now. How did it make life more difficult for you?
Oh, just
oh my gosh, he's so handsome. Oh no, he's so good looking. Oh no, what is it? What is it?
Oh no, you couldn't walk down a corridor in that school without someone singing one of the songs at you, and you come to hate them in the end. But that was an experience, and it stayed with me for a long time. So I did that. We did a production of The Jungle Book, which was fun. I played Bagheera in that. We did an adaptation of a couple of Blackadders, and I played the Hugh Laurie part.
Mate, you got some of the main roles.
I mean, I was good in those days at learning lines, and then I got older and I started to lose that ability a little bit. So when I went to university, and I went to Nottingham, where they put on a different play every week, and I was cast as the lead role in a production that was going to be the first of the season, and we only had 2 weeks to put that production together. And it was a small cast. It was a lot of lines, a lot of continuous monologues on my part, and that was the hardest experience I've had in terms of line learning, because often I didn't bother learning lines. I would pick them up in rehearsals,
right,
as we were going along, and I would learn through doing it, as opposed to sitting at home on my bed and just sort of testing myself. On that occasion, I couldn't do that. There was too much dialogue and too little time in which to do it.
Oh, that sounds kind of annoying, to be honest. Okay, another question.
Go for it.
Of all the things you've been in or TV shows you've watched, what's the most annoying character that you definitely want to murder? Like you could just get away with, just like no questions asked. Most annoying character you've ever seen that you just want to go.
Oh goodness me. So I've become a real fan in the last few months of an Australian sitcom called Utopia, which in my view should be more popular than it is, because it is a very perfect satire of both, I think, civil service culture and office culture in general. And there's a character in that that gets on my nerves, because she's probably a little bit too much like me. She is the clashes routinely come between this. So this is set in a civil service organization that deals with infrastructure in Australia. So it's building roads, it's building bridges, it's building that kind of stuff. And there is a continual clash between the CEO, who seems quite sort of put upon and stressed, and the media manager, who is.
I don't know if you can still hear me, but I cannot hear you. You got to the point where it said media manager. You've accidentally muted yourself somehow. There we go.
I'm terribly sorry.
How did you do that?
I don't know. If that happens again, I'll be very mystified and upset. Yeah, so the show, I mean, there's a number of different angles on it, but there are routinely clashes between the CEO, who wants to get stuff done, and the media manager, who is looking for the angle to portray it publicly and excite the government, excite the public about it. And that is, and her ideas are routinely bonkers, but the way in which she thinks reminds me all too often of myself. So it's probably a degree of self-loathing that I'm conveying here, in terms of wanting to get rid of that character. But I both love and hate her.
You've admitted you're an artist, and most artists hate themselves. So yeah, why not?
Well, you say that. I was painting a thing last night, and I can't paint for love nor money.
Wait, what you like? Do you mean like you're painting a room, like decorating, or painting like for the fun of it on a canvas?
No, I was painting on a canvas.
Oh.
I'd gone along to, there's a place in Spitalfields Market in London called Art Play, where they'll have someone at the front who sort of takes you through how to paint things. And this was a work social that my boyfriend was doing. and they had a spot available at the last minute, and he called me and said, come along to it. And I knew that I couldn't pay him for love nor money, and so it proved. My artistry is in the form of words, Dale, not pictures.
But did you have a good time, though?
Well, the red wine was free.
Oh, in that case, yeah. Hey, mate, you may have tapped in some kind of creative energy with the alcohol, because I'm not going to lie, it makes you do some wild stuff. I'll give you that. I can't remember. Are you London born and bred? Is that right?
But pretty much, depending on how London-centric you consider Essex to be.
Depends how far out you went. With Chelmsford, is that like, it's not London, is it?
No, not that far.
Okay.
No, so my hometown was on the London Underground, but it is in Essex.
Hey, if it's on the Underground, it's still London. It's fine. Zone 7. Zone 6.
Oh, no, Zone 4. But it did mean that when I went to university, I told everyone that I was from London, and they asked where, because when people hear about London, they want to know specifically where. You can never just say London. They want to narrow it down.
Now,
and once I narrowed it down, they said, "Oh, you're not from London. You're from Essex."
Let me judge. Where in Essex are you from?
So I'm from Woodford, which is somewhere between Leytonstone, which most people know as the hometown of David Beckham, and Loughton Epping, which most people know from episodes of Towie.
Okay.
And there were a few Towie alumni that were around my neighbourhood and went to my school and yada yada.
Oh, cool. And now you're in Southeast, right?
Croydon. I mean, yeah. So it is very much a town looking to better itself. There's a lot of building going on around where I am.
Oh, you know why I'm laughing.
Go on.
Well, because the way you said that, right? Like some people, all right, it's very easy to crap on a place, right? And lots of people do it. They'll crap on their hometown, they'll crap on somewhere. And the way you phrased that was just so perfect. Because Croydon, in some areas, is next level rough. Like every place has got like a rough place, but some places in Croydon are just like, Lord have mercy. No, like just.
No, I think the main issue in Croydon really is a miscalculation on the part of the council, as I understand it, where the main shopping centre was part of a bid to become a Westfield and it failed. So a lot of money went to waste in that process, and hence my council tax went up about 15% 2 years ago.
And you didn't even get the Westfield. That's the worst part.
Nope. No, we've got one very nice super dry in that shopping centre. That's it.
And how often are you going to be going to Superdry? Let's be honest, they're quality products. You're going to buy like one decent winter coat and some jeans, and you're good to go, right?
Pretty much. It's very much a twice a year tops kind of thing. I went on a major shopping spree there before I went to China in May of this year. Which was just after I left my last job. It was just after Accountex. And we already had that booked in because I have this ambition to see the 7 modern wonders of the world. 4 of which I've now done.
What are the 7 modern wonders of the world?
Well, these are the updated of the original 7 wonders, most of which don't exist anymore. Okay. So the original 7 wonders were the pyramids in Egypt, which are still there. And the others were the Pharos at Alexandria, the Hanging Gardens at Babylon, Temple of Artemis, and so on and so forth.
And the heads on Easter Island, are they a 7th wonder of the world? Is that right?
No. I feel they should be. I would love to go to Rapa Nui and see those. But the new 7 wonders are, I think the pyramids are an honorary member. But the new 7 wonders are the Colosseum in Rome, Chichen Itza in Mexico, the Great Wall of China, Petra in Jordan. Those are the 4 that I've been to.
Nice.
And the remaining ones, Machu Picchu in Peru, Christ the Redeemer in Brazil, and the Taj Mahal in India. So those are the ones that I still have to do. And it's just a question of making it happen time-wise and money-wise, but we'll get there.
I mean, how awe-inspiring was the Great Wall of China? Because it is like insanely large and long.
Well, the Great Wall of China plays with your mind, in my view. Okay. And the reason for that is, it's a very steep thing because it goes up the mountains, and it has the little castle bits at regular intervals all the way along it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say it plays with your mind is that we would climb up to one of these castle bits, and there are arrow loops there, and security installations and so on and so forth. And you get up to one, having thought that you'd gotten to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to it and you realize there's a whole other stretch of wall climbing ever higher that you never saw because it was over the horizon. So we spent a good hour and a half climbing that. And also the steps are completely irregular. Some of them are 1 layer of bricks, some of them are 2 layers of bricks, some of them are 3 layers of bricks. It is very much a mental challenge climbing the Great Wall of China. And that's why I'm very glad that I've got a thing on the wall there which commemorates that I did it. Because otherwise, how would I know? How would I prove it to people?
I'm going to say, I just Googled it while you're talking. It's 13,000 miles long.
Yes, I mean we did not walk the whole thing.
No.
that was a day trip from Beijing to one of the best preserved parts of the wall.
Okay, another question for you as well. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. Food in China, is it different to a Chinese takeaway here?
Yes,
it is. Right? It must be.
It is, yeah. And the main reason for that, and I said this in Jordan as well, because we were eating Middle Eastern food there. And for context, viewers, I've just come back from Jordan. I was there in mid-October. But the main thing that it seems to me we do with foreign cuisines when we co-opt them in this country is we smother them in far more sauce and spice than the original countries would have done. So when we went to Sichuan province to visit the panda reserve there, we, I think, are pretty familiar in this country with Sichuan cuisine. We associate it as being very saucy, very spicy. You go there, it is just normal. It's normal food there. They do not soak things. They do not bury things in sauce that will destroy your teeth forever and a day. So it is lovely. And the great thing about China is you can walk into pretty much anywhere and have quality food. But it feels more. It feels like they don't feel the need to stress that this is Chinese food because they are in China.
That makes sense.
It does a bit when you think about it. Yeah,
it's just food for them. They don't call it Chinese food. It's just food. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, of all the places you travelled, where's got the best cuisine?
Oh, that's a question. I did say to James Sundin the other day, because I think he's on the way out there now, that Mexico is the best place I've been to, and I would include the food in that as well. I think we don't quite co-opt Mexican food in this country in the same way that we do Chinese or Indian. I think Mexican food in this country is more similar to sauce than those cuisines are when you go to a particular restaurant in this country. But Mexico is just, for me, the best place I've ever been to, because it does everything. You want to relax, you can relax. You want to go on an adventure, you go on an adventure. You want to see nature, you can go see nature. You want to party, you can party. It just has everything on a stick. So for anybody who is looking for a varied holiday, and I am the kind of person who cannot do the same thing for 2 weeks on a trip, I have to have variation, then Mexico is for me a dream. And I hope, if I'm right, that James is out there, that he's having a great time. Although
sure
he's going to be asleep, I would have thought.
They're what, 8 hours, or depending where he is, 6 to 8 hours behind us, right?
Well, if he's not asleep, he's having a great time.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the comedian Jeff Dunham?
The name rings a bell. Tell me about Jeff Dunham, Dale.
He is a comedian that is a ventriloquist.
Yes, I have heard it. Yeah, my partner likes comedians who do that. So he's a big fan of Nina Conti and these kind of people.
So the reason why I asked that is because you said something like fun on a stick. And one of Jeff Dunham's characters is a jalapeno on a stick.
Nice.
His catchphrase is on a stick. And I thought maybe you're referencing that, but I'm guessing not.
No, I wasn't. But maybe I'm on the same wavelength as Mr. Dunham.
Yeah.
I shall touch base with him.
I mean, how are your ventriloquism skills?
Well, I'm not very good at keeping my mouth shut, so I would have thought not very good.
Oh, I was going to make a rude joke.
No.
No. I'm sorry. That was wildly inappropriate. Back to business. You know what? Let's just rest in the silence for a moment.
Okay.
What
And we're back in the room.
practice, action, or task
Mm.
do you dislike within your role? So, like, let me rephrase that. What thing do you see other marketers do that just really grinds your gears? That makes you go, "No, you're doing it wrong," or "You're making us all look bad." What's that? What's that thing that really irks you?
Oh, goodness me. Well, I think that it's not so much that it irks me about particular individuals making a mistake, but I do think that there is a lot of focus on doing as opposed to thinking in marketing. And that's not to say that a lot of thought doesn't go into particular campaigns or particular projects that we work on, but to be, I think, a balance between doing and stepping back to take a broader perspective of the business, of the brand, of shifts in the market, whether that be changing priorities for customers, changes in the regulatory environment, changes in terms of, it could be changes in terms of tax, and that seems fairly topical at the moment because a lot of businesses are reassessing their approach in that regard after the budget.
That pesky budget.
I mean, I'm not an economist. I don't want to pass judgment on the budget in particularly nuanced ways. It does seem to me.
I want to.
Oh, go for it.
My only beef with the budget, right, because there's so much in it this time, is often the government penalise business owners and entrepreneurs for their failings. So we saw it with pension contributions a little while back. That came out of that all comes out of the profit of businesses, and it's happening again. Like, businesses are going to have to take away from their profit to prop up, national insurance and employment stuff and tax and all that stuff. And that, I understand why the government have done it, but like, it's not businesses' fault as to why the government have mismanaged money over the last 15, 20 years. And to penalise businesses or business owners, it kind of annoys me, but I am heavily biased.
No, you say bias, but that is your genuine view. So you're speaking your truth, if you like. I mean, I don't look at it through an economic lens because I'm not an economist. What I can tell you is, as an observer of politics, I feel that the communication around the budget was odd. I didn't understand. Firstly, I didn't understand why there had to be such a length of time between the general election and the budget itself. When we last had a change of government in 2010, we had an emergency budget 6 weeks after the election. So why it is that there was this necessity to wait almost 4 months?
I mean, someone's got to do the maths.
I think, but I feel that the line that was given on that is that the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, had to prepare for the budget. But it's not as if the election came as a surprise to anybody. I think most people expected Labour to win the general election based on the polling prior. So my sense is that perhaps it could have been possible to get something out there earlier. And I think, irrespective of whether it was possible or not, the fact that that gap did happen allowed there to be what I call a narrative vacuum. It made, I think, Labour politicians it hamstrung them in terms of talking about the political programme for the future. They were very visibly not sure of what they could and couldn't say.
True.
And if you don't define yourself, you will be defined by political opponents. And that gave other parties the chance to define what Labour was all about. We now have meat on the bone from the budget. We understand what this Labour government is about, for good or ill. But it does feel to me like a lot of lost time. And I don't think that it's done them a world of good, irrespective of things that they couldn't control in that period. They couldn't control the riots after the election. They couldn't control that there was obviously friction between individuals in the Number 10 operation, and Sue Gray was there and now she's not, and this kind of thing. But I think that when there is a narrative there to be seized, it makes more sense to seize it. So that's my view on it. As I say, I'm not going to comment on the substance of the budget, because that would be me pretending to be an expert on something I'm not.
Okay, then here's a cheeky challenge for you, and you can decline to answer this because it's a very big question.
Sure.
How would you have communicated it differently if you were in charge of the marketing and comms for the budget and that vacuum? You mentioned there was no narrative. Like what would you have done if you were there? And I realize I'm asking you that as someone who's not an economist, not a politician, but asking you, someone who does copy, who does marketing and comms. How could they have done it better, in your professional opinion?
Well, I think there has to be I always talk in marketing about having a balance between journey and destination. And what I mean by that is that, in my experience, and maybe this answers your question earlier about what are the things that marketers do that grind my gears, I feel there is quite often too much emphasis on one or the other. There is either too much emphasis on explaining process or too much emphasis on explaining end goal without explaining how we got there. My view has always been there has to be a balance of the two. We have to explain how we do things because that projects our expertise. And I'm talking in terms of the private sector. I'll come to your question about the budget in a moment. But in order to impress your expertise onto a potential customer, you have to explain your methodology. You have to explain past precedent of work, how you do things, and who your people are and why they're great to work with. But you also have to have a sense of end goal. I can work with you, but what is the benefit for me of doing so? I once said to my marketing director at Walters Kluwer, you wouldn't board a first-class flight if you didn't know where you were going to land. The fact that the plane is plush and lovely is not in itself enough reason to board it. You have to know where it is that you're headed. So there has to be a balance between how you do things and why you do things. And it seems to me, in terms of the communication that I've heard coming out of the budget, there is how and there is why, but the why seems to be focused on the past. It seems to be focused on this financial black hole that was left by the last government, the 22 billion figure that they keep trotting out. I think that figure might be higher now because of some of the things that were excluded from that. I think there is money that was committed to victims of the infected blood scandal, victims of the post office scandal, that may not have been included in the figures. I don't want to say factually one way or the other on that, because there are people who will know better than I. But it seems to me that has been the focus of the why. What there has been less focus on is what the country looks like in 5 years' time as a result of some of these punitive measures. So if you are, for instance, raising national insurance on employers to raise 25 billion quid, which is a lot of money in terms of tax revenues, what is that being invested in and why will it improve things? I think that most people in this country are open to the idea of paying higher taxes if they believe genuinely that it's going to improve the quality and the level of service that they receive from the NHS, from schools, from the police, from transport infrastructure, whatever it is. And I think that a lot of people have lost a lot of faith, that these things can be gotten back to an even keel just by putting up taxes. Wow. So there has to be a vision as to what the NHS of 2028, let's say the next election is in 28, because I think it is likely, but on past history, that the election could be a year earlier than is legally required. What does the NHS of 2028 look like? What do schools of 2028 look like? How do we rebuild trust in the police, which has been shaken by numerous incidents over recent years. If the plan is to renationalise the railways, and my understanding is that it is, how will that look better? There might be nothing wrong with renationalising rail, but how is that going to happen, and why will that mean that trains run on time and run at a more affordable rate? All that end goal stuff provides an aspirational vision that people can believe in. And that's what I think is missing from the communication at the moment.
Two things. First of all, Kiddell for Prime Minister 2048, you have my vote. What you just said resonates with me. Great. I'd vote for you. And the only reason why I say 2048 is because I want to have a crack at 2043. So I'll go first, and then you can clean up my mess. Second of all,
does that mean we're having a go at each other over the dispatch boxes in Parliament?
Yes.
Okay, I'll book you in for that.
Cool, bring it. Also, I'm reading into what you're saying. So if I've inferred incorrectly, what I think you said, and this is how I put it through my brain.
Yeah.
I think you summed up what I dislike about marketing, right?
Okay.
My beef is sometimes marketing peeps can be like, hey man, look how much organic growth we had on the website. This is so cool. We've had so many people visit. And it leads to no actual leads or no conversions, right? And I know that conversions might be a sales job, but like people patting themselves on the back because an SEO campaign has managed to get more traffic clicking through, but doesn't mean anything unless it actually makes money in some way. That's my beef with marketing.
Yeah, so I think I agree in part with what you've just said, because any initiative within a business has to have a clear ROI, and the impact of that has to be measurable. It's very difficult to measure things like brand awareness.
True.
Because that's something that exists in the minds of people. We can research it, we can run surveys on it, we can run focus groups on it, but it's not.
Do you not have telepathic powers? Is that not? Can you not read people's minds?
Not as yet. No. No.
That's disappointing.
I'm working on it.
Cool.
But what I hope I have is the instinct to have a good guess at what people are thinking and have empathy with them and understand the issues that they've got and the ways in which it's best to pitch a solution to them. But going back to your question about driving traffic to a website, there is always value in doing that. But the value is not always immediately measurable. And you have to, first of all, you have to decide where responsibility lies for different things. So the question of conversion, for instance, does that sit with sales? Does that sit with marketing? And how is credit apportioned, when a lead is converted? But also the balance between lead generation and what we call brand building when you plan out your marketing strategy for the next 6 months or the next year. Brand building is something that I think is very, very important. And it may not result in a causal link. It may not lead you through a direct route to a particular lead. But it is something that you pick up on when, for instance, you go to events and you pick up on the recognition that people have of your brand and the understanding that people have of the ethos of it and what they do. I was saying to my now predecessor at Metis this week, when we think about competitor analysis, there is a difference between reality and customer perception. We might know, because of the kind of service we provide, that there is not actually a real competitor to us, because we deliver a variety of services and a type of service that no one else does. But that's not necessarily how the market perceives us, because we are a dot on their radar.
Yeah.
They do not have a granular understanding of us or of other companies. So in their minds, we do have competitors.
Yep.
And it's on us to educate about that. And these are the kind of intangibles that brand building can address. So when you go to an event and you pick up on the fact that someone A, knows your brand, and B, knows what you're about, that's got worth too. And particularly in industries like financial services, where a lot of business comes through advocacy, comes through word of mouth, who did your accounts, done a good job. That kind of thing is difficult to measure, but that doesn't make it worthless. And I think that in that sense, you can afford to trust your gut in regard to the impact of marketing.
Interesting. Thank you for that, by the way. That was like, you always give good answers, like always. there's always good answers. Okay, I'm gonna change gears a little bit again. So we're gonna lean in a little bit. We're gonna get closer.
Mm-hmm.
Get a bit closer. Go on.
Mm-hmm.
Don't rush this answer, please. What
Okay.
in the last couple of years has been the best advertising or marketing campaign that you've seen or witnessed? And that could be for anything. And why?
Goodness me. Best campaign of the last 2 or 3 years?
2 or 3 years. Like, yeah, something that you just, I asked you that question. What kind of springs to mind where you're like, oh my days, they nailed it. They absolutely...
Yeah.
You enjoyed seeing it. You enjoyed the reaction from it. The metric. Well, you can believe the metrics were good. Like you went, yeah, game changing, as it were. What was that?
Yeah.
We can go back 5 years if you want.
Yeah, I always think about this sort of thing in terms of the before and after. So it's easy for a brand that has a reputation for great campaigns, like a John Lewis at Christmas time, to churn out another one.
Mm-hmm. Or Guinness, they've always got good. Like the adverts always like cool. It's cool. Indeed. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying.
The campaign that immediately came to mind, and it is a bit older than the initial time frame that you suggested, was a print campaign that KFC ran.
Okay.
And it was after an incident where they had run out of fresh chicken in their outlets.
Do you know what's really funny? I used to work in distribution at the time, and I know why that happened, but please continue.
Okay. And they put, I think it was a print exclusive campaign, so it was out in newspapers. And they put out a kind of apology ad where they rearranged the letters of KFC to express their shock. For those of you who didn't see that campaign, I'll leave you to make up your minds as to what they might have done with that.
I think we got
but the thing that I loved about that campaign is that actually it was a campaign that everyone came away from suddenly understanding that KFC only worked with fresh chicken. It was a very odd thing, but it's something that would never have occurred to me. I don't think about KFC that often. I don't even like KFC that much, but I would have assumed that their stocks were going to be sat in the freezer for 2 months before being used. That would have just been my assumption about it. And that's why I talk about context. It's about how you turn existing customer perception, or how you turn what might have been a PR crisis into something that raises awareness about something that is unusual or unique about your brand. And that's something that when I did work in B2C marketing, so marketing to consumers rather than businesses, I said a lot because I was working in the gaming and gambling sector at the time. We're working in a sector where consumer perceptions are not always.
Were you selling gambling to people? Are you a vulture? Shame on you.
A very soft form of.
You've muted yourself again. That's very impressive. How are you doing that?
A very soft form of gambling. It was a lottery business. I'm
not angry, just disappointed.
So the tickets are £1. It's a very low risk form of gambling.
Mate, whatever helps you sleep at night is fine. I'm sure someone lost their house and car off your campaigns. It's all right. I'm sorry. That was really mean.
Those are the case studies we never told. I'm not aware of anything like that happening. But the point is that you are dealing with an industry that is treated with innate skepticism by the public, and in many cases with good reason, because I think we all know the risks associated with that kind of pastime. So the question then becomes, how do you turn a negative into a positive? And how do you express, your responsibility in terms of guarding against problem gambling? There are a number of safeguards we had in place that were passed down to us from the Gambling Commission that were non-negotiables. There were others that we put in place which were negotiable, which we decided to put in place to protect against that. We were at pains to talk about the good causes that were benefiting from the work that we were doing. So while I was there, this would have been 2018, we held an event at the Savoy in London to mark that we had raised £100 million for good causes in England, Scotland and Wales. And a number of the charities that had benefited from that money came to that event. And we had a great opportunity there to hear their stories and meet the beneficiaries and hear about how about their quality of life had improved as a result. And you did have the opportunity to meet the winners as well. And when someone wins 10 grand or someone wins £250,000, it's a great story. And these are the ways in which you take a brand from a disadvantaged position, if you like, and build something more positive out of it. And I very much believe that is possible. And it is a matter of identifying the angle and the execution.
I agree with you, and I was only teasing before. I know you work for the National Lottery, which is like it's a more moral form of gambling, isn't it? Like you said, it helps charities, it helps people. Like I get it. So
yeah, and it is by far and away the most tightly regulated sector I've ever worked in. And I sat next to our compliance manager for 3 years, and everything that I wrote in an email campaign or a social media post or an advertorial, everything went through this man. Now, thankfully, he was the nicest man in the world. And so going back to what we were saying before about openness to idea, we had a lot of amiable back and forths as to how I wanted to pitch something and how we were able to pitch something and meet in the middle and find something that met our compliance requirements and our responsibility to players, while also creating a product that was colourful and appealing and so on and so forth. But when you work in that kind of environment, that's you have something to believe in. And this is the great thing about working for Metis over the last 2 weeks. 2 reasons. One is that it's a young consultancy full of younger engineers who are either in their first, second or third jobs. And that's a bit of a throwback for me because it reminds me of the first job that I had. When I started out in marketing, I was working for a consultancy called Viastack at that time, which again was full of people in their mid to late 20s. I was 22 when I joined. And that was a great environment to sort of cut my teeth in. So that's wonderful. But the other side of it is the social purpose of what we do.
It's a B Corp, right?
Indeed, yeah, it is a B Corp. And the work that we do in terms of water engineering, highways engineering, infrastructure more generally, benefits people. It has a tangible impact on people's quality of life. Again, I don't want to go into the details of this because there's much about this that I still need to learn. But when your brand has a purpose in social terms and gives you something to believe in and good stories to tell, that's when you're in a really good place, I think.
I can relate to that. Seriously, like a lot of people think accountancy is a hygiene cost to a business, but a good bookkeeper or accountant can really help a business flourish, grow, succeed, or not maybe just grow, just actually be more efficient. And if you're dealing with smaller businesses, so like one person directors with like no staff, that's the difference between them doing a family holiday that year or not having a family holiday. Big difference.
Absolutely.
If it's a slightly bigger business, it's them, hiring 10 people and paying their staff properly on time and all that kind of stuff. Huge difference. So yeah, it's the difference between people having a good night's sleep sometimes or creating a business of their dreams. So I can get on board with that. I get that. I realise I've been talking and asking you questions for the last hour or so. It flies by. We're obviously going to wrap up very, very soon. Is there anything in particular you want to ask me? Like, I realise I've been kind of firing off at you. So only fair.
I get to ask you questions?
You could have asked me questions the whole time, by the way, if you wanted to. you just chose not to.
Oh, goodness me. Best account tech stand?
Based on size or design?
Oh, design.
I'm going to show you how crass
because this is marketing in itself, right? And I'm now in a role where I'm more of a generalist, so I'm dealing with event stands and things like that as well. So I know what I think, but I'd be interested to hear what you think.
I'll show you. I'll explain to you how visually crass my eye is. When I went to Accountex the last 2 or 3 years, QuickBooks always had a castle themed stand, right? And it's massive. It's not the biggest stand, though, but it's one of the biggest stands. And it's just ridiculous that it's themed in that way. And that is always in my head, right? And, there's other suppliers and providers that we use more frequently than them, but that nails it. And people tease them for the grandeur of that. I wonder how much that costs, blah, blah, blah. But we were all talking about it. Job done. Yeah. And I remember it.
Yeah. And do you see what I mean in terms of the intangibles?
Yeah.
People come up with, people don't. That doesn't necessarily immediately result in lead generation, but people come away with an awareness and what I call a stickiness factor. We all lead busy lives, and we're all moving from one particular focus to another quite quickly, whether that's focusing on work or focusing on bills or kids or whatever it is. So how do you create something which will reoccur to someone in a day's time, in a week's time? That's the question that marketers always need to be asking, I think, because it's very likely, whether it's an email campaign or a social media post or a press ad or whatever it is, that someone will think about 20 other things after seeing your material before they come to think about it again. So why should they remember it? And that's why I say, even in an industry which is so dominated by numbers as accountancy and financial services more generally, that is why the stories with humanity, with empathy, that tangibly improve people's quality of life, personally and professionally. Those are the elements that give a story stickiness. And that's why I think it's really important to not be completely dominated by numbers, but to remember the value of storytelling.
You know what? We're going to end on that nugget. That's fantastic. I'm going to hit end screen. Smile for a little bit because it takes a second to end. And then...
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me. Anyone watching this later, thank you for watching. And yeah, it's been a blast. Thanks, dude.
It's an absolute